Hi there and welcome to Trauma Therapy and Why. The introduction into the video you're about to or hopefully watch is a segment in a time of my life suffering trauma and then dealing with trauma beginning in childhood all the way into adulthood. The life segments are broken down part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, etc., with part 1 beginning in my earliest memory in childhood. Suffering trauma events and then going through life with trauma to where I suffered PTSD at 12. At the end of certain segment videos, I will have a reference page with evidence-based research and neuroscience and their findings on the brain of trauma that leads to destructive behaviors. Hopefully you'll gain insight into yourself or maybe someone you know suffering trauma. If you haven't, please go over to my welcome video, which gives a deeper understanding of who I am, why I'm doing this, and the horrible quality of my videos. I'm trying to keep it raw, not only because A, I don't know what I'm doing, but also B, there's nothing clear or glamour about trauma and living life in trauma. So please subscribe, like or dislike, let me know what I can do to improve or how I'm doing with these videos. I look forward to your subscriptions and your comments. Hopefully you enjoy the video and continue into the other series. Thank you and have a good day or night. Hi there. I am back for to continue my story, part 4. At the time that my mom had had enough with my dad, up at this point, it was summer, and my older brother that was home had started doing drugs while I was in the second to third grade. He was a senior in high school, and he was always running away from home. And basically, my parents gave him free will to do whatever he wanted. So, and he really took advantage of that. And the sad part about it is my brother Mike was one heck of a drummer. He actually won national titles. At the age of 12, he won this competition, and he got to do a duet with a famous drummer by the name of Buddy Rich. But while he was in high school as a senior, he had had enough from the trauma, and he resorted to doing PCP, heroin. Come to find out later, in my teens, he had shared his story. But he had caused a racial riot at the high school. So he was expelled from not only that high school, but from every high school in our county. So he was kicked out of school and he joined the Army. And him and I were close. He was really the only form of a sibling. And it was fun. Even though he was 9 years older, he really took me under his wing and he would do, you know, what older brothers do to younger brothers. And I really enjoyed his company, but I really didn't know what he was doing or going through. I just couldn't figure out why he was always running away. But up until this point in time, now excuse me, I do have notes. We had a substitute in our third grade class, and she was just really mean. I mean, she had this hairdo. I mean, this is going to the early 70s. And she had this hairdo that went straight up like Marge Simpson. And back then, it was the style. And called a bouffant. And it was all white. And she really dressed up with all this expensive clothing with the collar all the way up and tied with a gold medallion to hold it. I mean, just really mean. And she had told us, you know, what a way to treat a class. She says, if your parents drink alcohol and they tell you I love you when they're drinking, they're lying to you. And the first thing I thought of was my mom and dad. My dad, I never saw my dad with the drink. My mom occasionally would drink, I guess, to get ready for the beatings. So I thought What is this all about? So when my mom picked me up from school, I told her. And my mom says, I can't believe that. I wish I knew who she was. And at that point in time, the substitute teacher was walking across the parking lot, a few cars in front of us. And I said, there she is, Mommy, there she is. And my mom wouldn't get out of the car to confront her. And, say, why would you tell children this? She wouldn't file a complaint. And I just looked at my mom and I looked at the substitute teacher, looked at my mom, and watched my substitute teacher just disappear. And I remember my mom just sitting there, so I thought it was true. So at this point in time, whenever we went somewhere, and my mom, or when I was with my mom and dad, all the way up until like 5th grade, whenever we were somewhere and they would say, wait here, I always thought they were going to leave me. I thought I was going to, I was feared that I was going to be abandoned, because I really believe that. I mean, to this day, I remember it, and I'm 60, and it's 2024. Yeah, you can tell my age. I had to think what year it is. So I really developed a lot of fear. My dad started taking me to work, and he was an air traffic controller and really big with the FAA. And when he took me to work, his coworkers treated him different, and I saw a different man. And I couldn't figure out, why is he like this at work? And why do so many people respect him? Do they know what he's doing at home? And that was really, I saw a part of my dad that was different. And I really don't know what I thought, why he was the way he was with us. My dad never laid a hand on me, believe it or not. Praise God. But I really saw a different part of my dad that was really confusing. So not only have I developed fear and abandonment issues, or fear, so I had a deep state of confusion going on. The day, also at this point in time, which is really sickening and sad, my parents were swingers, and they would have parties while I was home, in bed late at night, and I could hear them. And to me, that just really freaking disgusted me, and I knew what they were doing, because when I was in the 2nd grade, I found my dad's secret stash, which really wasn't a secret, of XXX magazine, and I thought I found gold. I remember telling my friend, hey, I found gold! And we would run to my house, and we would go, and we would look at these XXX magazines, and I remember on one magazine, one company always had on the very back a smoker's lung and a healthy lung, and they compared the two. And I remember that, and I haven't smoked a cigarette in my life. I smoked a lot of pot in my early 20s, but never smoked a cigarette. And I would tell people as a joke, yeah, I'm a non-smoking pervert because of that one dirty magazine. And people find that funny, but it's really not that funny, because a child coming across porn is really horrifying, and it really rewires their frontal lobe. And I will supply a reference at the end, what neuroscience has found out with children and adolescents and porn, and the effects on the neurological makeup. But that also became my coping skill, was running to those magazines and, so besides fear, abandonment issues, or abandonment fear, my coping skills were developing horribly for the wrong. And with the trauma that I witnessed and the poor self-identity and self-esteem issues, neuroscience has proven there's a list of disorders, and one of them is emotional deregulation. A child doesn't know how to manage their emotions. And on top of that, my diet, because back in the early 70s, and still today, food contained a lot of sugar, and I had a huge sugar consumption. I was eating candy all the time. And if a child has ADHD or even doesn't have ADHD, sugar creates impulsivity of the brain and they lose control of the regulation and motor skills. So, with that being said, I kind of learned as an adult that I really didn't have ADHD like it's diagnosed today, but I had horrible functioning skills from the trauma and an overload of sugar, which I will supply a reference at the end. So, with that being said, with the swinger parties going on in the porn, I really developed a hate for my mom and dad. For some reason, I knew what they were doing was wrong. I didn't know that a healthy sexual relationship is kept between two partners, and I'm not judging anybody because I did try swinging in my 30s. But for a child, that's just wrong for your children to know that your mom and dad or your mom or your dad is doing that because you look at them as being pure and they're supposed to know everything. You know, what they say is right, and then they're doing this. For a child, I mean, I began to objectify women. Sorry. Nobody ever calls till I'm doing something. I began to objectify women. I remember being in school, we had one good looking teacher in the second grade, and I would always sit there and just fantasize what she looked like underneath her dress, which also took me away from learning. And it's just horrible. And this is what I was taking with me when my mom had had enough. And that day that my mom had enough, my dad showed up, and it was daytime. And he had cursed her out because she was smacking her gum. My dad hated that, and he hated when people would chew ice. And she was cleaning. She was a stay-at-home mom. Clean house, home-cooked meals every night. Just me and her, and sometimes my brother, and sometimes my dad, when she would curse her out and leave. But she was cleaning, and she was chewing her gum like she does, and he called her an obscene word, which I won't repeat, a racist word, and left. And I was on the couch, and she said, "Johnny, get your things. We're leaving." Hold on one second. Pausing. This will be the end of, there will be a part 2. Okay, part 4B. Sorry about that. Somebody came over. So, like I was saying, at the end of part A, my mom had enough, and she said, "Johnny, go get your belongings. We're going to my sister in Jacksonville." So we left. And I don't remember what I was going through. I probably just thought it was on a vacation because we did go up there to Jacksonville. And this one particular sister where we were going was one that every time that we were with them treated me nice. It wasn't the other one that was an alcoholic and rich and just as mean to me. But this one had 4 kids, 2 older boys, and then 2 girls. One was a little bit older than me. The youngest was a little bit older than me. And her and I got along. And I got along with the 2 older brothers. And they were just huge. I mean, they were bred somehow on my mom's side of the family. They were just huge. One of them was 6'6", 300 pounds, a high school football star. And the other one was just really tall and lanky, and they were outdoorsmen. They were into hunting, boating, fishing. So I was happy we were going up there. And I really didn't know what it was all about, but I was happy. And my aunt, bless her heart, she was a lot of fun. She was really overweight. And come to find out, she had a thyroid problem. And boy, she could talk. If you guys think I'm long-winded, like my therapist does, she can just tell one story and go off on 20 trails, and then finally, after 30 minutes, say, what was I talking? What was I trying to get at? So I knew I was in store for a lot of fun. Uh, and I had someone to look up to, the two older boys. And while we were up there, we had a lot of fun. And I started school in the 4th grade there, and everything was fine. Um, no issues. I never had a guilt complex about comparing myself to others. I made a lot of friends. And even though where we just left from, the neighborhood was full of kids. So I was always had a group of friends. And really no one picked on me. It was just my own thoughts of how I was developed compared to everybody else is what really killed my self-identity, my self-esteem, and then all the other crap I was going through. Sorry that I keep fidgeting and rocking. I'm trying to stop that rocking like I'm on hopefully no one's getting seasick or have to take Dramamine watching me if anybody is. My cousin, it's kind of hard not to say names. One of my cousins took me out squirrel hunting, and he was a football star, and he used to put his pads on before he played line, and that's when they wore arm pads. And he would put them on me, and we would go in the backyard, and he would teach me how to get in the stands, and we would watch football together. Just had a lot of fun. And then one night, I slept in my younger cousin's room. Her and I was in there. Then her older sister, I don't know why, but she was sleeping in one of the 2 beds, and she told me to sleep with her. And you can figure out what happened there. And I remember enjoying myself. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what from all those books. And I remember the other cousin was telling us, you better knock that off. You better knock that off. So that had happened, and it really didn't affect me till the next morning. I was in the kitchen with my mom, and she came in the kitchen, and she was just glaring at me, looking down at me with this look like I did something wrong, and she was going to tell on me. And she just had this really mean look. And now that I know the terms, I was full of shame, and which leads to guilt. And I thought I did something wrong. So now I had, on top of all the other stuff, now I got a guilt complex that I did something wrong and she's going to tell my mom and I'm going to get trouble. Already dealing with abandonment, fear, and man, that was just like really. And I remember staying away from her. Even though she tried to be nice to me after that, I was just like, oh, what's her motive? I mean, I didn't know that word back then, but yeah, that just really freaked me out. And man, I mean, just even thinking about that now kind of creeps me out. And then at some point in time, I started missing my dad. And I kept asking my mom, when are we going to go home? When are we going to go home? I want daddy. I want daddy. I want daddy. And then I got permission from her to write my dad. And I wrote him this heartfelt letter. I don't remember what was in it, but I was sharing all the things that I was doing with my cousins, like going squirrel hunting. And it was also at this point in time, they were into dirt biking. And they wanted me to ride with them on their bikes. And my mom wouldn't allow that. And they had this little mini bike. And my mom wouldn't allow me to ride that either. She was really overprotective. Like I had said, they gave Mike free will, and he really destroyed that. And later, as a teen, my mom told me why they were overprotective. Because of what Mike did. And me being her youngest and being born dead, she was really overprotective with me. And there was other kids at the park, well, the field where they would go dirt biking, and there was kids my age and younger riding dirt bikes and mini bikes. And I left out that first grade teacher. This is important. That annihilated me for ruining, quote unquote, her play, not the school play, but it was her play that annihilated me. You know, she had put her finger in my face, yelling at me before the play, "You better not mess up my play." And I remember thinking, why is she pointing at me and why is she yelling? Does she not know I'm standing right in front of her? Excuse me. This one particular day in class, we had a coloring project and I didn't finish it in time before recess. So all the other kids got to go to recess and she told me to get up from my desk and go by the window so I could watch the other kids enjoy recess. She says, "You sit here and finish your coloring and you look at what's not meant for you." That really affected me because when my mom would not allow me to ride the little, what the hell did I call it? The little motorcycle thing, mini bike. I started believing that's not meant for me. It's meant for others. So now I'm starting to develop. There's things in life besides not looking like everybody else, developing like everybody else. There's things in life that's not meant for me. So I started believing that in the fourth grade, that others can enjoy things, but I can't. And I didn't know why. It was effed up, man. And so my dad had reached out to my mom after about, I don't know, we were up there about 9 months. School was almost over. And come to find out, he had reached out to my mom and he wanted to come up. He asked for permission to come up. And they kicked it around. And I remember my aunt and my mom talking. And she's like, "If he comes up here, I don't want you in the house." She was being protective like siblings are. And my mom, and I was on my mom. I want my daddy. I want my dad. I don't know why I missed him, but come to find out later and going through psychology classes and my master's degree in forensic psychology, a child needs a parent, both parents, especially one that's a father that is knows how to be strict with compassion, and then the mom. I'm not being sexist at all. I'm just old school, so forgive me. And then the mom to be more loving. And there needs to be a healthy balance between the two. And so that's why I've learned. That's why I was missing my dad. So she agreed for him to come up, and he came up in the motorhome, and he slept out in the front yard. And his brother, my Uncle John, was still in the Navy. He worked on the Navy station there, and we went to the naval base. And of course, the Marines and the Navy were really at each other's throat in that era. They did not like one another. So we went to the bar, of course, and my dad found a table of Marines, and we sat by the Marines, and my uncle would sit with the other naval officers. He was an officer. And then they had an air show coming up. My dad took me to the air show. I got to meet the Blue Angel pilot. So really had a ball. And then, of course, after the air show, we went back to the bar. And rules were really lenient back then. And all the Blue Angel pilots were there getting drunk. And I really hated people that were drunk because they were loud, they were obnoxious. And it's weird because everything I hated, I became. But I never beat women like my dad. But I got to meet them all, and I got to shake their hands and listen to their stories. And of course, when some people are drunk, they get really talkative. And they were telling me all these stories and talking about flybys and how they train. I was really enjoying it. And my mom and dad had a long talk. He was up there, I think, about a week maybe. But the day that he was going back down south, and they made an agreement that my mom was going to bring me back home. And what I didn't know that I learned later in life, which is coming up in the next segment, things were to turn around somewhat for the better. well, actually for a lot better, but there was still needs that I was robbed from that I needed from a father. So that's coming up beginning from 5th grade on. I thank you for, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. And hopefully this is helping you. The next segment after this, part 5, I've decided just now. I will have the reference slides because I really don't know how to use Clipchamp yet, as you can tell. And I will have some figures on what childhood trauma does to the child and adolescent brain. Thank you for joining, and hopefully you skip over to part 5. Thank you and have a good day. Signing out.